the K convention is a gathering of professionals in the built industry. We're in the built industry. We just wanted to be part of this event to get to know new people, share ideas, learn together, and just gain more knowledge and feedback from our other professionals in the built industry about how we are doing, just to help us to perform better.
It's my honor to welcome you to the Architectural Association of Kenya Annual Convention 2019, whose theme is Building Blocks and the Built Environment. As built environment professionals, I think it's very important for us to raise our awareness on how manufacturing processes work in terms of cost and policy, and how they affect the bottom line of our projects, how they affect the quality of the projects we produce, and of course the impact on the environment. So AK has been at the forefront of advocating various matters on behalf of our members, including on matters local content, capacity building, the ease of doing business, access to information with our Built Hub, as well as the status of the built environment report we launched a few weeks ago. And of course, mentorship matters and our place in the global village, very much evidenced in this week's sessions, having CAA as well as AQS here with us. This year, we have had sessions discussing the future of architectural education, as well as building a sustainable consultancy practice, leaning on systems and processes, and we've advocated on matters of local content in the public sector, as well as through media. We've launched registration for a mentorship program, which I urge all members to sign up for, and mentors and mentees will be matched in the last quarter of this year. This year, during our convention, we are privileged to be hearing from a number of built environment consultants who have trained as architects or engineers and who have reverted to manufacturing in a quest to provide solutions that will be beneficial to us. They've been behind the development of some very innovative products that bring down costs, allow for modular production, and as a result, provide sustainable building solutions. Yesterday, something caught my ear as at the CAA assembly as the immediate past president was making his address. He reminded us of the three things that Vitruvius thought or felt that an architect and indeed a professional in the built environment should concentrate on, and that is beauty, strength, and durability. We have dealt with beauty so many times, there's no need to talk about it. We've dealt with strength, we've dealt with durability. Now we want to know functionality and how the things that we employ in our professions come together.
It's a challenge to all of us to be problem solvers and not just consultants, problem solvers and find things. So I just want to thank my panel, Silicon Savannah champion, Maslow man, the sanitation superwoman, the Lion King.
As private sector, we really need to get the government to understand, this issue of the cost of doing business and what all these trade agreements with different countries, different regions means for us.
On the sub-theme for product innovation for buildings, we have 4 panelists: Jonathan B. from Pangaea Accelerator Group, Charity Wanjiku, Strauss Energy, Mr. Mboro Karanja, Managing Director for CMEX Holdings Limited, Winnie Ngumi, co-founder of Space and Style, a Kenyan business.
The people seated in this room, because they are the specifiers, the ones who understand technical performance of products. If they don't specify our products, then who will buy them?
Building manufacturing for climate sustainability. Gideon Olawo, current chair of Environmental Design Consultants Chapter. Jayantha Pereira, founder, director, and vice president of the Green Building Council in Sri Lanka. Peter Obon, senior vice president of the Commonwealth Association of Architects. John Kabuya, vice chairperson at the Kenya Green Building Society.
Our traditional system is that we consume and release waste. That's how it's always been. But then, how do we look at a way of designing the built environment where we can also do a little bit of recovery? How do we recover water? Have some of this water reach recharge back into the ground so that our water aquifers cannot really go down. In the next 4 years, the government of Kenya is focusing on 4 key sectors. On top of the general focus it has as a government, it is putting special emphasis on 4 sectors or 4 pillars. And one of them is manufacturing. We want to grow our manufacturing sector to 15% share of the GDP. You can buy your raw materials without paying any import duty on them. It's one of the tax incentives we have adopted, generally to spur the manufacturing sector. We have also reduced export duty in relation to import duty, so that the import duty is higher for finished products, and then the export duty is very low for export products. One of the biggest costs in terms of manufacturing is power. A few weeks ago, we gazetted regulations on power rebates. If you are engaged in manufacturing, you can now be able to claim up to 30% of your power costs. The final point is, apart from those policies we have done, apart from the laws, apart from all the sectors we are focusing, we also have, government is deliberately creating spaces for industries where we put the infrastructure that is required, and then investors come.
Good afternoon, members, participants, delegates. Good morning for others who are joining from other parts of the world. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to this webinar organized by the Architectural Association of Kenya, AAK, Environmental Design Consultants Chapter. Our webinar today is going to focus on discussing the emerging fire protection challenges, the risks and response strategies that we can put in place to actually protect our built environment. Today, we have a line of expert speakers who are drawn from the policy environment and also from the practitioners, and who are going to share with us their experiences, both in terms of policy framework, as well as their experiences on the ground responding to emergencies caused by fire incidences in our buildings. So I invite us all to be very attentive in the subsequent session to listen to their input, and we'll open the forum after the speakers have shared with them their experiences, an opportunity for us to give our reactions, and we welcome input from all, as especially we would like to get an input from a contractor's point of view, from consultants' point of view, from the suppliers' point of view, and even from the general building users. So to set us rolling, I would like to invite the host of this webinar, who is the chairman of the Environmental Design Consultant Chapter, that is EDC and architect Gideon Olau, to welcome us officially, and then he would go ahead to introduce our president of the association, who will officially open this meeting. Welcome, Gideon, to share your remarks and officially invite the president to open this forum.
Okay, thank you very much, Architect Nixon. I also want to take this opportunity to welcome all of us into this inaugural webinar. It's actually heartwarming that we're able to have this afternoon, all of us are assembled to just go through today's discussion on emerging fire protection challenges, risks, and the response strategies from the experts that my colleague has just mentioned. As by name, as has been said, I'm Gideon Olau, architect. been the chair for the last 2 years, and it really makes a big difference when we have an event like this prepared for members and the general public, whether it's consultants and indeed all of us who will be able to consume this information. So at EDC, that is Environmental Design Consultants chapter, we are actually one of the 7 chapters that AAK has, and ours is to seek to ensure that our members address areas that touch on building performance. And a lot of times people ask, what does EDC, what do the EDC members do? So allow me to just give you just a brief of what we do at EDC as a chapter. And ours will be very brief on that matter. We basically seek to ensure that our members are mandated to areas of that covers. Second is to cover adequate and optimal ventilation and cooling. As you might have known, that even the current pandemic, we are told when we're in spaces that are well ventilated, or when you have meetings, you must be spaced. Spacing basically means you have more draft or air flowing around us, and we at EDC are pride in that. The other aspect that we cover is basically heating and cooling in buildings. We also look at waste and wastewater management. We look at noise control and acoustics, so that the buildings that we have designed need to meet certain thresholds, especially when it comes to noise controls and acoustics. We also have we encourage our members to ensure that after design and building is done, we check on how the building is performing in terms of sustainable innovations that have been, incorporated. We look at also energy efficiency, so that when our clients and our users actually benefit from our designs that that harness on efficiency when look at equipment and appliances. So up to there, I would like us to move forward and say also that we at EDC have come up with a tool, a green rating tool that will be launched soon as AAK. So AAK has developed a tool that we as Kenyans can be able to use together with others that are in the market, but this is a homegrown one. And so without further ado, I would like to just take us back to where our webinar is, and we basically one would ask, why look at emerging fire protection challenges, risks, and responses strategies as EDC? As I mentioned, one of the areas that we emphasize on as to our members and to our clients is on energy efficiency, and we look at equipment and appliances. And these appliances use electricity, and sometimes when electricity is not used correctly, we have incidences of fire. And so I want us to look at fire incidents are being very frequent, and they occur everywhere. They can occur even in the seas, where we have oil tankers in the traveling around. But for us, as those in the built environment, we look at fire can happen on a floor of an office or on a building. It can happen in a data center, in any of those mobile phone companies, or in banks. There could be a fire breakout in the parks as well. We could have we have had cases where there have been a fire outbreak out there, but that being a different ecosystem. There have also been notorious fires we've noticed in institutions of learning and in dense settlements, in the informal sectors or settlements. We've had incidents of fire all over the place. And when there is an incident of fire, fire leaves behind a trail of destructions. And there we have lives lost, property lost, and untold, amount of trauma to those left behind. And so it's very important that this webinar will, unlock some of the points that we need to take and take into consideration as we interact in the buildings that we come across, whether they are residentials, offices, or institutions of learning, or classes and the likes. And so what one would want to ask of this afternoon is, what are the trends of these fires? What are the causes of the fires? Could they be policy oriented? Could they be design? Or could they be just laxity in the enforcement? And so to help us get this done, we'll be able to look at it from the policy point of view, the implementers point of view, those responding agencies like Red Cross, and indeed all of us as designers as well. But first, let me allow me to bring on board our association, Madam President, Madam Architect Mugure, to just give us her remarks so that we're able to now discuss our subject matter today, our theme, in a way that has a direction. So allow me to welcome Madam President Mugure. Please come on board.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My thanks to the chair and host, chair of the EDC chapter, Architect Gideon Olawo, and of course also to our very able moderator, Nixon. Asante sana for the kind introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Architectural Association of Kenya, I wish firstly just to thank you all for attending this session. I want to just take a minute to just speak a little bit about AAK as an association. We're the leading association for built environment professionals, and we have a very holistic membership, which means we don't just have architects, as the name implies, but we are architects, quantity surveyors, engineers, town planners, environmental design consultants, landscape architects, and construction project managers. Today's webinar is being ably hosted by the Environmental Design Consultants chapter, which has been very active and vibrant, and we do appreciate them holding this very important conversation on emerging fire protections challenges, risks, and response strategies. The importance of this conversation cannot really be overemphasized for the audience. Fire safety is a life-threatening issue and concern for all of us as Kenyans, and really understanding the high-risk conditions as well as how we can improve our response strategies is a matter of a lot of concern, both in buildings as well as public spaces. I just want to put it a bit in context. If we just take Gikomba alone as an example, in the past decade, Gikomba has burnt every single year except 2011, 2013, and 2016. It has burnt about 10 times from 2010, with 3 of the incidents happening in June of 2015, 2018, and 2020. Putting aside, of course, the cause of the fires, there's definitely a need to improve on response times and capacity during each incident that has happened. AAK has been at the forefront of addressing in terms of stakeholder engagement and giving professional input and expertise in a revised building code that actually a draft is completed and with the AG's office. This building code has, we worked closely with NCA on it, and we have actually provided a revision in terms of a very robust and enhanced fire safety and fire installations regulations for buildings. I want to further challenge those who are listening to this session as built environment professionals to be solution providers to the most vulnerable of fire threats. And that is particularly in informal settlements. A number of challenges are witnessed in these settlements due to various factors that make them very high risk for fires, whether it's illegal electrical connections, inflammable sources like kerosene, or just simply the structures are non-fire rated. And of course, in terms of response, access to where the fires are happening for fire emergency response services. It's my hope that in this discussion, we all live considering how we can be part of the solution towards enhancing fire safety at all the various scales, whether it's a building scale, whether it's a public space scale, that we all be part of providing solutions towards that. With those very few remarks, I think I just want to again thank the EDC chapter for having this very, very important conversation. Their able chair and moderator, for all the speakers who have taken their time today to come and share your expertise, your experience, and your knowledge. We really, really appreciate you as an association. And lastly, for all the attendees who have taken time off your afternoons, we know that these are unusual times. It's a cold Wednesday afternoon, but you've taken the time to come and join AAK in this conversation. Thank you very much for coming. Karibuni.
Thank you very much, Gideon, and thank you very much, Madam President, Architect Mugure Njendu, for your remarks and for setting the ball rolling. Now, without taking much time, I would like us to go straight on to our discussion for today. We spend 90% of our time in buildings, and these buildings are supposed to cushion us from the external elements and risks, including weather and such risk as fire. And today we want to talk about how we can actually protect our buildings from exposing us to the risk of fire and how we can respond when the fires arise. And I really want to build it on what the president has just said. Really, this session is not for blame game. It is basically for pointing out the gaps with a view towards, as a sector, as coming up with solutions. So as we go into the session of the presentation and sharing experience from our experts, I would like to urge us to take note of the key gaps that have been identified. And after this webinar, of course, as a chapter and as AAK, we look forward to engaging with the stakeholders here and those who are not attending this session to find a way of how we can institutionalize some of the recommendations that will come from this discussion. So having said that, kindly allow me to now move straight on to our session today. We are going to have the conversations led by the policy makers in this particular space. And so I'm going to invite the Directorate of Occupational Health and Safety under the Ministry of Labor, which is represented today by the able Deputy Director and the head of the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. So before he comes on board, takes the platform, we would like to introduce who Dr. Andrew Muruka is. So kindly, Gideon, would you kindly introduce Andrew? And then Andrew, please proceed to make your presentation. I would appreciate if you can limit it to 10 minutes. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Secretary. I can come in, Andrew?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I want the audience to see you. So we want to just take this opportunity to thank you very much for making time to come. And without any further ado, I would like to introduce our main speaker today, Dr. Andrew Muruka. Dr. Andrew Muruka is actually the Deputy Director of Occupational Safety and Health Services at the Ministry of Labor. He is the head of National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health in Kenya, and he covers research and training in all aspects of occupational safety and health. Andrew comes with a wealth of experience. He was formerly working as a safety manager at Cambridge Wellcome Trust Research Program, and he has he's worked with both government, where he is now, and private sector, and he's been teaching undergraduate and postgraduate students at the Kenyatta University and Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology. He's been specifically handling areas of skills in occupational safety and health policy development, and in business continuity planning, fire and first aid management, emergency response and preparedness, special interest in workplace comfort and workplace terror and bullying. That I think is very important. And so he is basically an alumni of the University of Nairobi, Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology, KISI, where he obtained his doctorate degree. And so allow me to invite Andrew to take on the floor. Andrew, please welcome.
Thank you very much, architect. I am so glad to be here today to share some of the experiences about policy and the legal environment, specifically with respect to fire safety management. And I will be making a short presentation. I will be making a very short presentation. So I will share the screen just shortly. Yes, thank you all. I will be speaking about policy, legal, and the institutional framework on fire safety in Kenya. And of course, I will cover a few areas. In the menu, we have the mandates and functions of the Directorate of Occupational Safety and Health Services, DOSH. I will also look at the national policy on occupational safety and health, and maybe highlight some provisions relating to fire safety management. I will look at the Occupational Safety and Health Act, several provisions relating to occupational safety and health. And of course, I will also be looking at the fire risk reduction rules. And finally, I will look at the Code of Practice on Occupational Safety and Health auditing, specifically with respect to fire safety management. Now, the Directorate of Occupational Safety and Health Services has the vision to be the best agency in ensuring a healthy worker in a safe work environment. And our mission actually is to promote a safe and healthy workplace by implementing effective systems for prevention of occupational diseases, cases of ill health, occupational accidents, and damage to property. This is in order to reduce compensation claims, the cost of production, and also to improve productivity in all sectors of our economy. We have mandates, and our mandate is derived from the Executive Order number 1 of 2020 from the Executive Office of the President, and there are 3. Number 1 is to inspect workplaces to ensure that workplaces comply with laws relating to occupational safety and health. The second mandate is to promote occupational safety and health in workplaces and also in the society. And probably that's what I am doing today. One is compensation for work-related occupational injuries. And these occupational injuries include both occupational accidents and the cases of occupational diseases. We have 9 core functions. Because of time, I will not look at them, but I will look at one core function that we have at the Directorate, and that is the approval of architectural plans of all buildings intended to be used as workplaces. Under the Occupational Safety and Health Act, Section 125, subsection 1, it states that no building shall be erected or converted for use as a workplace, and no structural alteration and no extension shall be made to any existing workplace, except in accordance with plans showing details of the proposed construction, conversion, alteration, or extension approved by the Director of the Directorate of Occupational Safety and Health Services. So we derive our core function number 8 from this particular provision. Now, when we go to the Constitution of Kenya, we know that it provides for firefighting services and disaster management as part and parcel of the functions and powers of the county government. That is derived from page 176 of the Constitution of Kenya. Now, when I go to the National Occupational Safety and Health Policy, which is May 2012, there is actually no specific provision on fire safety, except 2 provisions that are provided for with respect to approval of fire safety training institutions. So the Directorate of Occupational Safety and Health Services is mandated by the policy to approve all fire safety training institutions in the country and to approve a curriculum to go with it. And secondly, to approve people that will be conducting fire safety auditing in workplaces. So those 2 provisions are important, and they are provided for under the National Policy for Occupational Safety and Health, dated May 2012. Now, the provision is with respect to the development of human resources for supervision and control of workplace activities. And these workplace activities also include inspection services, training of fire safety auditing, and of course, ensuring that workplaces provide for systems for detection and prevention of fire. I'll now turn to the Occupational Safety and Health Act of 2007, Municipal Act with respect to fire safety in workplaces in Kenya. Now, the most important and the first provision I want to talk about is the provision relating to fire safety authorities. Officers under this law is required to consult the fire safety authority of the area in which the premises are located if that officer would like to issue a notice on matters relating to means of escape in case of fire. Now, the other important provision relates to goods, articles, and substances stored in workplaces. And the law requires that such goods, articles, and substances shall be stored in a manner that they don't interfere with efficient functioning of sprinkler systems, unobstructed access to other firefighting or fire extinguishing equipment within the workplace. So in terms of storage, any good or article or substance stored must not or equipment. We also have provisions relating to stocks of highly inflammable substances, and the law requires that this shall be kept either in a fire-resisting store or in a safe place outside any occupied building. And there are provisions relating to the fire-resistant stores, including what constitutes a fire-resistant store. We also have provisions relating to highly flammable liquids, which are required to be conveyed within a workplace, and it requires that such conveyance shall be through totally enclosed systems, incorporating pipelines and pumps or similar And this is not possible, then the law also requires that there must be containment of leakage of highly flammable liquids within workplaces.
Sorry, it seems we have a connection problem with Dr. Muruka. Let us give him just a short while. Hi, Dr. Muruka?
Yes, you can hear me?
We lost you, sorry. Can you proceed? And
yes,
kindly,
I am.
Kindly
I think, sorry, sorry?
Yeah, kindly proceed as you move towards finalizing because of time. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So there must be separate means, likely in places where there are highly inflammable liquids, where there are dangerous concentrations might be expected. Smoking is prohibited in workplaces, which have, of course, highly inflammable materials. And in terms of explosives, there must be precautions with respect to explosive or inflammable dust or gas. And the workplace must work towards preventing any form of explosion. And if this is not possible, then there must be systems or constructions that restrict the spread of explosion. Excuse me. Now, we also have fire safety precautions in case of fire. And one most important provision is that all fire exit doors shall be constructed to open outwards, except if they are sliding doors. In terms of fire, all persons are required to be familiar with the means of escape in case of fire and with the routine to be followed in case of fire or other emergency. So the law anticipates that there must be some other forms of emergency that can force people to evacuate, including terrorist attacks and those kind of things. So when I look at briefly on the factories and other places of work, fire risk reduction rules, that is fire drills, and in every there shall be at least one fire drill conducted in a period of 12 months. And there must be emergency exits, there must be sufficient number of fire extinguishers, and there shall be a firefighting team, which is dependent on the size of the particular workplace. Now, when it comes to the code of practice on occupational safety and health, there are two key provisions with respect to fire and emergency response. The first provision is on emergency response in case of fire, explosion, and or collapse of structures. And the second one is on fire safety, and we have 19 audit provisions. These provisions include provisions for detection of fire, spread of fire, the infrastructure needed to prevent fire protection, fire from occurring in workplaces, and also emergency response and planning for fire. I think I have come to the end of that presentation, and maybe I will take up questions if they are there. Thank you so much, and we're grateful.
Thank you very much, Dr. Muruka, for that presentation. Sorry that we missed part of your presentation when you lost connection. But we hope we can catch up through the interactions. Now, allow me to introduce our second speaker. We will have the speakers back to back, then we'll take on the discussion and questions and feedback at the end of the session. So our second speaker comes from the National Construction Authority. And I would like to invite briefly, Gideon, kindly introduce engineer. Keep it brief and let us proceed. Welcome, engineer. Gideon, kindly unmute your microphone. Sorry, Gideon, would you unmute, please? Gideon, are you having a problem? Hello, Gideon, you finished? Well, welcome, engineer. I think you could just go ahead and introduce yourself briefly and pick on the floor to proceed to your presentation. Seems you're having a technology challenge.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah, yes, we can hear you.
Hello?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right. Let me then introduce our next speaker. So we have Engineer Stephen Yakondo, who is the acting manager, research and business development at National Construction Authority, where he leads a team of 14 researchers. Engineer has a proven history in initiating programs aimed at discovering and disseminating new ideas over the years. So allow me to just ask engineer to come in and share with us his experience, his information, all that he has today for us to be able to move forward. Thank you.
Hello, I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, you are audible.
Thank you very much, moderator. Thank you, AK, for this opportunity so that you can be able to share the information that you have and even the experience that you had in the field. I've previously worked in public works where we are doing design for building construction. Currently in the research department, we've been able to do quite a bit of research in the construction industry, trying to see what are the hindrances that are there to make or have quality products in the construction. So my presentation, I want to be very, very brief. And probably I just first of all have to highlight who sent me here. Our executive director, he was supposed to be able to come in and make this presentation. But unfortunately, because of some circumstances that he could not be able to avoid, he had to miss this presentation. But I'm here to be able to do the presentation on his behalf. And I just pass these apologies to you. So the presentation that I'm going to do, number one, is to just illustrate what the NCA is. And I believe all of us being in the built environment are aware of what NCA is. It was brought on board through the NCA Act 2011, which gave us the mandate to oversee and coordinate the construction industry and ensure that its development is promoted. There are three key technical functions that the authority does. First of all is on the regulatory, where we ensure that the industry is well regulated and trying to make sure that all the practitioners comply with the law. We also do research and advisory, and then also do capacity building. We have a section which goes out to ensure that all our practitioners, the contractors, the construction workers, and everybody who practices in the industry is brought up to speed with the new technologies. And I believe this session that you've given us, and there's so much that I've learned, especially from Mr. Muruka from DOSH. There are so many things there that we need to pick up and see why are they not being followed. So just briefly on the introduction, fire risks is quite, it's a big risk in the construction industry, starting all the way from the design process through the implementation process and to the complete building. And given that we are really moving very fast into developing the country and building high-rise buildings, it's becoming even more complicated. But the only unfortunate part is that do we have these standards that we can be able to use as an industry in terms of designing these high-rise buildings? If you go out there, you'll find that there are buildings that are being done, some of them to completion, without any fire infrastructure in place. That's a question that has always been in our mind, and we want to see how we can be able to address this. There's a study that was done, and it was indicated that fire accidents in Africa are quite high compared with other continents. And I don't know what could explain that, but I think it's something that people need to research and see what is the cause. Why is it that in Africa we have so many fire accidents? The fire protection engineering is quite a fundamental aspect which needs to be brought on board in terms of the construction industry. We really need to start working on this aspect of fire protection engineering and making sure that it is now becoming a very strong professional entity in the design team. A study by the Nairobi University that was conducted in 2018, it was found that 86% of the buildings in Nairobi are non-compliant. Most of them do not have the required measures, the required preventive measures that have been put in place with the various laws that are in place. And I think, as Muruka has mentioned, they are quite extensive, and probably there is need for people to be able to get to know all these issues that have been raised. We find that there are buildings which have they host people, and they do not even have exit signage. Some of them are obstructed. You find people have a fire exit, but they've put doors, they've put boxes, they've put chairs and blocking the fire exits. Some of them are not lit. There's no route planning. There are some buildings within the city or this country where you find people have occupied beyond the design factors. And you see that's also a risk in terms of fire, the fire issues. Very many buildings within the city also do not have this, disabled people evacuation systems. Then alternative escape routes are not provided. The doors are either broken or they're self-locking. You cannot be able to open. There's no smoke control or even mechanical ventilation systems that can be able to prevent people suffocating in smoke. So some of these challenges, you find that there are very many in the construction industry. And NCA being one of the leaders there, we try to see which areas are we as an authority able to address of regulatory and enforcement, as you had earlier mentioned. So the NCA comes on board through the Act, and, and the key area that we are given as a mandate is to ensure safety in the construction site and to ensure that the construction products that are done meet the quality standards that are required. And then also to try and coordinate and to ensure that the laws that are currently existing, because there are very many laws that are currently existing that relate to fire prevention and fire protection. All these laws, they need to be put together so that you as the user or the person who is doing the design or the person who is staying in the house is within the standards that are recommended. Then we also have the State Department of Public Works. The State Department of Public Works has a fire section department, and this fire section is the lead government advisor in terms of fire prevention and firefighting, especially for government buildings. And when there is an occurrence of a fire, they are the lead or the official government. They are the ones who give the official government position in terms of fire investigation services. We also move on, and I think Lucas mentioned occupational safety and health. It talks quite elaborately on fire management on work sites, and the Factories and Workplace Act gives a detail of all this infrastructure that is required to be able to take care of the workplaces. But the only thing that probably we need to enhance there is the issue of the definition of a workplace, because I know there are buildings that are being done. We have residential buildings that are being done, and to some extent, or to a greater extent, do not comply with these regulations, because people think it's a residential, so you do not want to register it at a workplace. I don't know. That's something something to discuss. But I think there needs to be some structured way of taking care of the residential, because we are doing a lot of residential buildings. As NCA, from our records, so far we have close to, I think, close to, is it 56% of the construction projects that have been registered are basically residential buildings. And if they are at risk, then it means the country is at risk in itself. As an authority, we also have been spearheading the National Building Regulation, which basically tries to adopt quite a bit of what the Factories and Workplace Act talks about, especially on infrastructure. We try to, in that document or that regulation, it tries to strongly specify the infrastructure that protects the building. The previous regulation that was there, which I think is not appended anywhere, but people are using it because of goodwill, which refers to the BS standards in terms of fire design, which is something we can say, some of these standards, especially if you go to the outside the country, some of them, they move very fast. They evolve very, very, very fast. So you may be adopting something which is outdated or defunct. So we are pushing, and it's, as the president mentioned, it's currently at the edges. Hopefully we'll be able to have it enacted. And this gives us an opportunity to bring on board accredited checkers. These are the people who are going to make sure that even our residential drawings that we submit are checked by professionals who are in this field and be able to give very objective outputs. We also have the Urban and Cities Act, which also talks about the infrastructure, especially on the fire stations. It provides that all cities that are being established should be able to have fire stations within themselves. Then we go to the county government. As also mentioned, it's quite a big stakeholder in terms of fire management. The county governments have been mandated to be able to do firefighting, to do rescue operations, to provide safety training, to do fire investigations, to do emergency evacuations. So the fire disaster, it's called the Fire Disaster Management Departments in the counties. They have enacted their own bylaws, which take care of fire prevention at the county level. And I think this is somewhere where we need to see how can we be able to merge the counties and the national government. There's a lot of synergy that is needed, so that as the national government brings on board the policies and the county governments implement these policies, then the synergy is quite important, and it's very, very important at that point. Given that, I just want to highlight some of the challenges that we've been able to identify. They may not be conclusive, but I think it's something that we can continue discussing and elaborate and make better. The first one is on the issue of the framework on how the fire mandate of the State Department of Public Works impacts on private development. The public works, they've been quite strong in terms of the public buildings, but I think there is the need for them to also go into the private development, because there are policies that they've been able to develop. There are some standards that they've been able to develop, which needs to trickle down into to the private development. Then the fire department itself is staffed with engineers, although most of them are engineers who are coming from other fields and not specifically trained on fire management, which also raises another question here. We do not have enough fire engineering experts in this country. We need to have experts or people who have been trained specifically on fire engineering to be able to come on board and provide the design services that the country needs. Also in the counties, I think also the other issue that you also have on the counties is the issue of staffing. I think there are some few months ago, we had some complaints about some countries not having fire officers on the ground. And I think that's something that needs to be looked at. Finally, the fire department of the country is not well involved in the policy and the design stage of construction. We need to have them coming on board, especially in terms of giving advice. When we are doing our designs and we need to provide the workspaces or spaces within the building, the fire department should be able to come on board and be part of the approval process, get to know that which building is coming up where. Does it have enough access? Does it have enough infrastructure? Does it have enough parking? Where is the hydrant placed? You know, that kind of the design needs of a building, they need to be put in place in advance when you're doing the design work of the building. Then finally, we also look at the issue of the planning department at the county level that does not require fire designs as part of the approval documents. This is left to the discretion of the consultant or the developer, and most often are not, they will omit this due to the costs. Yeah, and I'm specifically looking at the residential buildings. It's not a requirement at the county that you have to do fire design. The issue that I was also raising on the issue of manpower, we as a country, we need to introduce fire engineering. It's quite a new concept, and I know very few people are doing the designs, and you'll find if you go out there, we do not have fire specialists doing the designs. You'll find an engineer, either mechanical or electrical, is the one who's doing the design for fire. So we need to have a specialist who's been trained on fire to be able to come on board and be onboarded as part of the design team to do design for fire. And developers are not obligated to incorporate fire designs in their project, since the service is deemed not very important. So there's no market for trained fire officers. On the issue of equipment and machinery, I think also it's quite a relevant area to look at. We have very few companies that manufacture fire components in this country, and almost 80% of the equipment that we install is imported. That raises the cost, and when you bring out the argument of costs in construction, I know very many of us developers will start running away because we feel like it's not very important. And then in terms of the design, and as I said, because of the specialities that is there in the design team, we are relying on very archaic management of fire management systems. When you're looking at water-based systems, when people have moved to preventive systems, where you don't even need to do any fire fighting, you can be able to prevent the fire before the fire comes on board. So I think the design element needs to be looked at very specifically in terms of the systems that we are proposing as consultants and the systems that are being implemented. Then the issue of fire-rated materials, I think that's also something that needs to be looked at. The manufacturers are very few in this country. And another key area is also on the issue of ICT. Buildings worldwide are moving to the Internet of Things, smart building concepts. And these are areas that as consultants, we can be able to measure in and look at the smart building concept to see how can we be able to prevent fire in the buildings. The other issue is on cultural and attitudinal changes. I think we need to change the attitude that we have as a people in this country, where we look at professionalism being very expensive and not trying to put on board professionalism when you're doing our designs. Fire accidents occur in shanties and low-lying communities due to the building types. I think when you start looking at the building, fire can occur anywhere. Even in stone houses, fire still occurs. So every building has a risk. So it's important when you're doing the design, you weigh the risks, and the fire specialist is the one who can be able to do that analysis for you. So we need to have fire specialists on board. Fire designs is a very small element that is very costly. You know, those are what I'm trying to bring out is what culture we have as a people. We don't think fire is something that is very key. Yeah, because we've gone out there as NCA and we found buildings that are being done without an electrical engineer being on board. And if you do a building without an electrical engineer, that's a risk of fire. So we need to have these professionalisms as part of our systems. So what is the way forward that we are looking at? The first one is we are proposing that if we can be able to have an integrated fire management system, which can be able to bring on board total stakeholder involvement, so that when we are discussing, we should not be hearing new, how do you call it? We should not be hearing something that is existing as a new item. But if we are in a circle where we keep on discussing like this kind of forums, then we can be able to have the stakeholder involvement. Let the developers themselves also be part of this discussion. Let the construction worker, the guy who is building, the fundi himself, be part of this discussion. Even the mamamboga who is selling just outside the construction site or outside your building. Yeah, if you go to our estates, you'll find people selling gas outside the building. Let them be part of this discussion. So we are saying an integrated fire management system which involves all stakeholders is very important, because this is how we can be able to get feedback, we can be able to exchange information and ensure continuous learning. We can be able to learn from our experiences. I know the various fires that have happened in this country. Do we have any learning items from the reports that were done? Is this information available to the public so that we can be able to know? And also, as a country, we need to do a lot of research work. We need to promote research, create more opportunities. And I think probably now for DOSH and the other government agencies, we need to see how we can be able to provide funding for fire research, for research on fire prevention and management. Then the other big area that I think we need to start working on is capitalizing on big data. We have facility managers. Facility managers collect a lot of data on buildings, but this data, is this data valuable to the country? If we can be able to tap into this data, there are so many things that we can be able to do as a country. So this system, to me, is one of the key areas that we can be able to tap into as a country and modify what we can do in promoting fire safety in this country. There is need for harmonizing the laws in fire safety through the development of the fire safety policy. And I think that is something that the director for DOSH mentioned. There's already a fire safety policy that's trying to work on that. But I think we need to now encompass all and sundry into this. And then also we need to encourage our training institutions. We need to have even degree courses for fire engineering. It's a key area in this country right now. We've had so many fires in the recent past, and I still don't know why we do not have degree courses for fire engineers, and probably even the engineering bodies. They need to start recognizing this as an entity on its own and register fire engineers. Thank you so much, moderator. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer, for that very informative presentation, building on a very also elaborate and informative presentation by Dr. Muruka on the policy framework. You've given us a series of challenges and even practical recommendations that we would discuss at the end of this session. Now, before I bring on board the third speaker for today, I would like just to remind our participants that you can post your questions or comments on using the chat tool, so that we can sample them and we can respond to them at the end of the session. And of course, those that will not be able to cover today, we will send them over to the panelists so that they can email us back their responses. Now, allow me please to introduce our third speaker, who is also going to bring us his experiences from the field, especially as a responder. What happens when the good policy frameworks that have been highlighted by Dr. Muruka are not enforced? And what are some of the realities on the ground, what engineers said, what happens actually when those gaps, the issues, inadequacies we have seen are really not on the ground? So we would like to hear from a perspective from Kenya Red Cross, and I would like to invite our speaker, who is Mr. Hesbon Odhiambo. Mr. Hesbon is an emergency operations center officer with the Kenya Red Cross, where he has been working for the past 13 years as a disaster risk reduction, project assistance, and disaster response team leader for Nairobi County. I think this makes him the best placed person to talk to us while most of us are working from Nairobi. He is also going to share his experience as a trainer on disaster management response, first aid, and search and rescue. So allow me to welcome Hesbon to share with us his experiences and some of the response strategies that he proposes to address these challenges. Welcome, Hesbon.
Thanks, Nick. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, Hezbon, we can hear you.
First of all, I'd like to apologize to the participants. I'm very sorry. My gadget has brought problems at the end of at the beginning of this. I could not have my video okay. As in initially, I thought my video is going to be working well, but right now it kind of like just went off. Like you've heard, my name is Hezbon Odhiambo. I am the Kenya Red Cross Emergency Operations Center Coordinator. Initially, I was working in Nairobi County Red Cross branch, that is in town, the city. I have been the emergency response team leader or tactical emergency response team leader in Nairobi County Red Cross branch. If I talk about tactical emergency response team leader, this is a team of responders who normally are trained in various fields in terms of emergency response. We work with the fire brigade, the county fire brigade, defense forces, or I mean the guys who are we call tactical people who go to do the actual work on the ground. And I'm happy to be here today to be discussing about this issue. And another thing is I'm also a trainer in tactical response, like you've heard, where I specialize in disaster management and response. I specialize in instant command system. I specialize in aquatic rescue missions, that is deep diving. I specialize in search and recovery or search and rescue, that is building collapse. I also specialize in first aid and medical emergencies. I'm an emergency medical technician, what we call a paramedic also. Wacha niwachie hapo for now so that I don't say everything, but ideally we are all rounded. But most of all, I'm an emergency vehicle operator, that is. So we are trained to drive ambulances or emergency vehicles, that is in any emergency setup. On top of this, due to emerging issues within the urban setup, I was also trained in tactical counter-terrorism also, which I'm also a trainer. So this means that I've practically responded to almost all the disasters in Kenya. So you name it, and mostly in Nairobi, you'll find that we have all this that have happened within this. So for me, discussing about this is something that is very key, and having some very key players is very, very, very important. You'd think like you'd ask why Kenya Red Cross is dealing with all these things. Basically, we are dealing with all this because of our formation within the setup of that is Nairobi. We are formed under Cap 256 of the Kenyan Constitution, and one of our main objectives or aims or mandates is to respond to emergencies and offer humanitarian support whenever there's any disaster or emergencies. And people would always say that Kenya Red Cross only deals with disasters alone, but we don't deal with disasters alone. What we also deal with is some programs that reduce or mitigate impacts of disasters within the country. So as you know, Red Cross is all over the world, universal. So some of these departments or programs are probably around the world also. One of the things that we do is DRM, disaster risk management, where we have DRR, food security and livelihoods, where we try our level best. For example, like during this COVID pandemic, we partner with organizations to be able to support those who have been affected by various, that is COVID or other emerging issues or various emergencies. We also have what we call DM operations. In DM operations, we have what we call emergency operations. That is where I fall under the disaster management operations, where we actually now respond to the emergency itself, dealing with tracing, we're dealing with a bit of food security, we're dealing with the tactical response itself, the actual response. On top of this, we also have other programs, that is health, nutrition, and social services, where we also support nutritional issues. You look at the ASAL counties or areas where we have acute food nutrition issues or shortages. We also go there to support. And these are normally they don't come out very loudly as like the disaster responses come out. Above all this, if you look at the sides of northeastern Makueni, that is eastern provinces, you'll see a lot of Red Cross programs dealing with WASH, that is hygiene promotion, rehabilitation of water pumps and things like that. That is part of this. And as you know, Red Cross thrives by having a very large number of volunteers. Currently, we are talking about 65 to 70,000 volunteers. And these are the volunteers who run Kenya Red Cross as such by being members. And by being a member of Kenya Red Cross, you're part of all these programs that we do based on your expertise. And we invite you to also, be part of our decision making that is in our AGMs. On the side, we also have something called Global Fund that deals with a lot of drug and substance abuse, people who are living with HIV. So it's another program that we also have within the Kenya Red Cross. So as you can see, Red Cross has quite a bit. And in this context, we also are thinking around responses. So you've also heard about the ambulances that we have. That is E+ ambulances. Currently, they're it's like a business entity on the side that supports the Red Cross one way or another. And these are also a product of Kenya Red Cross. So coming to emerging fire protection challenges, risks, and strategies, I mean, for me, my angle is going to be very different. I've seen that I'm happy that we have National Construction Authority on board, guys we've worked with in so many areas. I think the latest we worked with them was Tasia building collapse. That one, I think we were together from A to Z. I believe engineer can attest to this. So we really work together in quite a bit of this. So moving forward, engineer. So one of the challenges that we have, and forgive me participants, if possible, if you have a pen, I'm going to be talking, but you can post in case you have a question or anything, you can just post there if you need me to clarify something. Now, the major challenges that we face as responders, I'll talk about my personal experience and bring it as close to the reality as possible. One is availability of equipment. When sometimes we have challenges, when you have emergencies, you would go and reach a point of, you want to offer support. And let's say, for example, you get into a building and you see a very good hose reel, or you see a fire hydrant, and you just want to use that equipment because you know how to use it. And by the way, I didn't mention that in most of this building we have the suppression equipments that have been put in place. But the question is, are they really working? I mean, do we have the water? So the availability of the equipment is also another challenge. You'll go to a building, you not find fire extinguishers. I want to do this. Why am I saying this as a responder? I'm a medic. The thing is this: when I get to a scene, let's say of a blast, for example, if you talk about talk about Westgate. When we went to Westgate, we are doing first aid. We are offering first aid, doing evacuation, and there's shooting. There's this, and that out of that shooting and that evacuation process, a fire erupts, and I want a fire extinguisher at that point because I need to move this casualty away from here as fast as possible in 2 dimensions, as a medic and as a tactical responder. And I can't find a fire extinguisher. I just can't find one. So this is one of the things that we face. That is a big challenge that I would like architects, and if not architects, designers or interior designers, to be able to look at some of these things to be available. That is one of the challenges that I normally see when we respond. The other one is acceptance to test equipment and personnel. One of the biggest and greatest issues we've had in this county is basically people do not want to do what we call drills or simulation exercises. People are afraid because companies are saying it's too expensive. Companies are afraid of economic imbalances when they do this, losing stocks. Companies are afraid of, they don't want to be exposed. People are compromising even safety of the employees. So people don't want to test this equipment and personnel. You want to train fire marshals for 2 days because you don't have a budget. But a fire marshal is supposed to be trained for over 5 days or something and then tested. So I'll get into that building. I expect to find a fire marshal. I want him to help me to do CPR. He does not know how to do CPR. I ask him to pull the pin of that extinguisher. He has forgotten. I mean, there's a lot of issues that we face. But when you look at the person having a uniform, I'm a fire marshal, there's certain expectation from us external stakeholders who are coming into that building or that institution to be able to assist. So there's that acceptance of testing equipment and personnel. We need to embrace the fact that it is okay for you not to be okay, but not being okay means you work harder to be okay and be better, but not only for you, but for the people you're serving. So that one is another one for me. Well, unreliable water supply, I can't blame anyone for that, because this is just how we live. Sometimes we have water shortages because of 1 or 2 or 3 issues here and there. That one we can't say anything. But again, I'll take that back to the second bullet, where we say we test our equipment. It is important for us to regularly test. I like the way the fire team normally do it. Every morning they have drills, and the medical teams every morning they have runs, and they have drills, and they have tests that this equipment is okay. If all of us can embrace this, and I can say one time I visited a company called Bamburi, I think, and every morning they have drills and simulations, and they have something for safety for the people. So I think if we embrace such kind of things, then it would be very good for us, and it can be a really big improvement for us in terms of response. And again, on reliable water supply, I'm going to go back to informal settlements. If you go to informal settlements, back when I was doing what we call disaster risk reduction and urban risk reduction, and then I came to something called urban resilience projects or programs, whereby we teach the community how to be resilient. So one of the things that some organizations have done is trying to create what we call community fire stations, whereby you bring tanks and you bring pumps and you bring pipes. And remember, these informal settlements have Ngong River and Nairobi River cutting across. This Wananchi, they use these rivers to be able to put out the fire. But now, how are we supporting them as organizations to bring that water closer to them so that they can be able to support themselves the first 2 minutes? Remember, the first responder is not me and you as Red Cross and National Construction Authority or AAK. It is not us. The first responder is that Wananchi who is in that house who's facing that dilemma. So we need to support them as much as possible. The challenge is getting that reliable water supply that we just said this one is for extinguishing fire. But again, it's not very easy because here there are policy issues in play. There's so much that is in play that we need to really talk about, and probably we bring it down to to the table, we can be able to discuss about this. Oh, my worst one is poor infrastructure. Now, basically looking at roads and construction. This one was a dilemma for us one time. You guys remember the fire in Ngong Road, where fire trucks went and they found kumbe the road was being constructed and the fire engines could not enter the premises. That is the point where a first responder is frustrated to the highest level. So again, I don't know how we can do this, because when you're constructing something, either we don't want to listen or do research or find out as responders, or the people who are constructing do not give out the information. So I don't know where this comes in, but this is a big challenge, because for me as an operator in Nairobi County, I have to constantly drive around roads that I've not passed through in a very long time, because I don't know tomorrow I'm going to be flying at high speed going to respond, then I find a very big ditch or find a big mabati like the one in Mombasa Road, or a very big barrier. So I don't know. So these are some of the challenges that we face as responders. Of course, it boils down to us as personnel. Do we have enough personnel? Recently, I saw Nairobi County trying to recruit more firemen. That is very, very commendable. I don't know how regular we bring in these firemen and responders who are able to respond to emergencies, whereby we don't have people who are not quite up to the task. Remember, responses are evolving, and we should evolve with the responses ourselves. So I think these are some of the challenges that I wanted to highlight. I've taken you guys quite a bit fast, but I've given a few examples, so I believe you can remember the examples. Now, talking about risks and hazards in fire protection, well, like I've said, non-operational or lack of safety equipment. So you get to a place and you find a very good hydrant, and this one has happened to me firsthand, and I saw that is a hose, and I am sure the hose iko na maji, and I pulled the hose. To my surprise, ilitoa hewa. So I'm like, okay, so where do I start from? I don't even know where the taps are. This is another thing. So if you have non-operational and safety equipment, I think I was in Nakuru somewhere where I found some extinguishers that have been bundled into a store. And this was a very big problem. These are things that can be a bit challenging. Then lack of safety training and emergency action plans. Now I'll go to the emergency action plans, and I'd ask if there are any participants in this forum, tell me if you know at least one emergency action plan of an institution that you normally go through. For example, have you ever stopped to look at if Tuskys, Naivas, the supermarket have action plans? We don't know. Are they displayed? We have been told some of these things should be displayed where we can see them and be able to operate and use. So again, if you don't have this, then it means the Dusit incident, something like Dusit would happen, whereby you're running and you don't know where you're running to, and you end up running into danger. But if you have an action plan and you know what's supposed to be done, it has been disseminated. I like the way supermarkets normally say, at least keep 1.5 distance, keep this one customer at a time. We have such kind of things. So again, these are some things that for us as responders, we look at. And then improperly design and install safety systems. You have them, but they're not very well designed. For example, either you have a fire extinguisher placed, it's either too low or too high, or at the wrong place, or too far. But as long as it is somewhere it can be seen, or it is placed in a place where it's either an exit or an entry. Okay. So improper use of office safety equipment, block sprinklers, those are some of the things that we look at as hazard. Now, can move forward. All right. So the other thing is, so we're looking at hazards that we have, combustible material being placed on site. We're talking about something to do with, remember the Sinai fire? The Sinai fire was another big one for us, where we had people storing petrol inside homes. This is another thing that some of hazards that we look at as responders, whereby we go to respond, but there are issues there. Dust pileups, vapor, liquids, escape routes are sometimes placed the wrong way, or even closed or locked in major offices. And probably we don't have uniformed personnel. So for responders, these are some of the hazards that we look at. And even as you're doing design and the architectural work, maybe some of these things should be considered and maybe looked into. Stephen, I have 2 minutes, I think. Engineer, yes, can move forward. What are our response strategies? Now, I want to almost conclude with this. I think this is my second last slide, if I'm not wrong. One, our response strategies is we create awareness to the community before any emergency happens. One of the things that people do not want to do is to create awareness. Go to the community and enlighten them on what to do in case of an emergency. In case there's a fire, we tell them, do not stone the fire engine. Do not do this. So we create awareness, and please, as an organization, you take yourself to the community, let them know you and your uniform before anything happens. Not that siku ya disaster ndio kila mtu ametokea na magari zake. So these are response strategies that we're supposed to look at, whereby you fit into a structure of a community. Early detection and early calling for help. Do these community members know our emergency numbers? Do we have it out there? Do we want to put them out there? We need to give them our emergency numbers and how they can reach us very easily, because when they detect it early, then they can call for help early if it is us. Another thing is informed and trained staff on site. That is fire marshals, I've spoken about that. Proper equipment on site, internally and externally. Some ambulances would come to an emergency sometimes and they don't have enough equipment and they don't have enough supplies. So this also poses a bit of a problem. So this would really hamper a bit of our interventions. And then trained response agencies. We have some agencies sometimes who come and we find ourselves that we're not trained in something. So I want to know quite a lot about National Construction Authority. It is my responsibility as Kenya Red Cross to invite National Construction Authority and get to understand ile kanyundo unapiganga nayo ukuta ujue ni strong kiasi gani, what does it do? That is my responsibility again. So for us, I think this would be some very good strategies to know how our other organizations are working. Another thing is dissemination of emergency numbers, like I've said. And then up-to-date response equipment. We might have response equipment, but they're outdated. Do we do research about some of these things? We need to move with this also. Do I have another slide? Thank you. And for me as Kenya Red Cross, we say we are always there. We are first in and last out. We normally say that our numbers are out there. If you want to reach us for any emergencies, you call 1199. Ile number CS Mutai Kagwa Natoanga, that is my office. So you call 1199. It is toll free, hautalipishwa chochote, and you just state your emergency and we'll be able to link you up with any of these agencies that we have, some of them on this platform, and reach out to you as much as possible. I will accept any questions, but I know it is later. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hesbon, for that presentation. And I guess we have taken your number, 1199. Now I remember that. At least if I forget everything you said, I'll remember that. Thank you so much, all our panelists, for your presentation. I would like to bring to your attention apologies from our fourth speaker, that is from Nairobi County. As Hesbon just mentioned that he's glad that the Nairobi County, they are doing recruitment. Actually, it so happened that the HR department, they scheduled the interviews today. And as the head of the unit, unfortunately, our speaker had to attend. So Brian Kisali would not join with us. We take his apologies, but if you have questions directed to the county, please go ahead and ask them. We will make every effort to ensure that we take them down and share with him so that they can be responded to. Now, with that, then we now proceed to our interactive session. I would like to get feedback on those presentations that we've had. We began by a presentation, an overview of the policy framework by Dr. Muruka. He raised a lot of issues. We have good documents. I personally was surprised to understand that as architects, you should be able to have your drawings approved by OSHA. In my experience so far, I have never had my drawing approved by OSHA. And I was just curious to understand how does DOSH interact with the county's development approval process? That is my particular question first, starting with Dr. Muruka. And how do we build on synergies? As the way engineer was saying, how can we be able to harmonize the legal and policy frameworks? And we also don't have duplications, or you have institutions that are working independently. Especially, I recall the engineer mentioned a very interesting case that most of our projects that you don't have the fires actually safety requirements for the approval processes, especially for the smaller scale projects, residential units, except for Machakos County. I know all the counties, they don't demand to see the fire safety provisions before they approve your plans. So my first question, of course, there would be, can we strengthen this policy? Are we, as built environment professionals, liable? We have not been having our drawings approved by DOSH so far, at least for the renovations and retrofits. That's my first question. But so that I don't take the entire floor, I would just like to open it up to members. If you have any questions and comments, you can post them on and we will pick them and they will be answered. So let us start off with this comment in terms of too good on paper, but in practice, there is no cross communication, there is no coordination, and then we are left to do whatever as professionals we think we deem fit and is working for us. What is your comment, engineer and Dr. Muruka?
I was to start. Thank you, Barotino. I think that's a pertinent issue that has been there in the industry, and we've realized that in all aspects, the construction industry has very many laws, but these laws, as you mentioned, even me, I've been doing designs, but I didn't know that we need to take them to OSHA. So I think those are areas that we need to iron out so that we put them together and have them packaged so that you as a consultant, you're aware of your liabilities or what is it that you're supposed to deliver for the construction industry or for the client that you're designing for. As an authority, we are trying to see how we can be able to harmonize. And we already have discussions going on, especially with our sister agencies, to see how we can be able to develop a document that if you as a consultant can access this document, it links you to all the laws that are there in the construction industry. So it's something that you're working on as an NCA on other aspects, on various other aspects, but I think we also need to start this discussion on the fire prevention area. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, engineer. Dr. Muruka, what do you say?
Thank you so much, engineer. Thank you, architects. One of the questions that you have raised is how are we linking with county departments on planning issues to ensure that the approval process is harmonized as far as possible. I think one of the latest attempts was last year when we were developing what is called the e-construction platform, which is an online platform for approval of plans for the county of Nairobi in particular. And we almost reached a solution, but I guess that I think the other issues came up and we were not able to accomplish this. But I think it was one of the best attempts so far, because it was going to ensure that all architectural drawing plans had to be submitted to DOSH first before they are submitted to the county government for approval. And this will be online on the e-construction platform. I hope that we will be able to continue discussions on how to implement this, and it might be successful. Of course, it was supposed to be accompanied by legal reforms. Unfortunately, the legal reforms took place without that bit being put in place. But I still hope that it can be done even without the law, so that we are able to work together as institutions responsible for approval for safety issues, and more so with respect to fire safety. So I think I can stop at that point for now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for your response. I think I look forward to more collaboration to see how this can be harmonized, of course, without ending up creating another bottleneck that we have so many approval places. You know, you have to take your designs to so many institutions. So without really going to complicate and make the process much longer, if we can have integration to bring the different responsible entities together to be able to, you know, ensure compliance and seamless approval process, that would be great. And allow me to go to another comment that arose from, of course, most of your presentation, starting from Hesbon, just talked about the level of awareness. Engineer, you referred to it, number of challenges that where you have even this fire protection systems in place that people are largely unaware, they're not functional. You have, for example, escape routes that are blocked or they don't have water supply. And I think Muruka also, you mentioned this as a very common challenge, that the level of awareness of building users about the design strategies that have been put in place within the building is quite very low. Now, I wanted to understand from your perspective, what could be one way to really raise this sensitization? And I would post a comment in terms of what I was thinking. Hesbon gave us a challenge that Red Cross, you see, they really go to the people, and before they respond, already every Kenyan know what the Red Cross are, even before they get there. But then the NCA, we are not known. Of course, DOSH, we are not known. And in the events that we are known, people would rather run away from us. They think now we are going to arrest because we are coming as Kanjo. So would we build a culture that we more engage with the building users? And from a compliance and enforcement perspective, I would like to pose this to both of you, Engineer and Muruka. What do you see as a potential of insisting on building user guides? Because what I mean by this, often we as designers, we have our good drawings that we have designed, we have our specifications, and through the project, of course, from approval to the construction, we ensure that these provisions are complied to. But once the building is done and is handed over, often in our context, we don't have a document that is actually left with the building users that stipulates what were our design interventions. What are the strategies for these systems to function optimally? So like you have the users that have blocked the escapes, fire escape routes. You may not blame them because they really don't appreciate the functionality of this. They have blocked the access to the firefighting equipment, or the tanks that are supposed to provide the water supply in case of emergency are not functional. Do we really need to blame the users only, or are we also responsible as players to ensure that our design information the intent that we have is communicated, and what do you see as the role probably to ensure that our consultants, professionals give user guides, and probably we begin to build a culture of, you know, post-occupancy evaluation, going back to assess our building. That would be one question that I have for, particularly for you, engineer, and to comment on. What do you say?
Thank you, Architect. I think that's a very pertinent observation, and I think as a country we have had a weakness in that. I know the county governments have a role of making sure that as before the building is completed, you must be able to have the as-built drawings, and also the county inspector should be able to come and do an inspection on your project and give you an occupancy certificate. So to that extent, there is that aspect that you're talking about of making sure that the building owner is part of the process. But the concept of the user guides, it's a very good concept that I think we need to start adopting. And probably as NCA, we may need to also have this discussion with the county governments so that as the consultants finalize or produce the as-built drawings, they should also accompany those as-built drawings with the user guides. So I think, Architect, that is a very good idea, and we can be able to pick it up as the research department, try and delve into it deeply and see how we can work on it.
Thank you. Allow me, just before you comment, Dr. Muruka, to ask other questions so you can join them together, because I see we may run out of time, but I want to bring as many comments as possible. Okay. Some of the participants are asking, when do we expect to have a national fire policy in place? And I think that is a question that you also need to address. Another participant, Stanley Maina, is asking, there is a point of conflict between property managers and occupation safety measures. That is leaving fire escape route open. It becomes a security concern on the users of that space. So how do you balance the security concerns against the safety concerns? And probably that might not be only for you, Muruka, but that might be a design intervention that engineer might want to comment on. Probably often you find that the fire safety measures are not designed by all the consultants thinking together. Then the last question I'm bringing on board before we take the next session, another round is, how can manufacturing sector be encouraged to produce more fire-rated materials at affordable cost? That is for you, Dr. Muruka, but I think engineer could also respond from NCA, because you have a role in terms of creating an enabling environment to inform the Treasury around what fiscal policies would actually encourage uptake of essential materials and technologies in the sector, for example, around fires and safety. So we could take those ones, and then we can take the next round. Please, we can start with Dr. Muruka. Sorry, Muruka.
Thank you so much, my brother. I think I want to comment on the issue of obstructing of fire escape routes, obstructing of fire safety equipment and firefighting equipment of all kinds, and also the issue of training of fire marshals. I think we have approved curriculum for training of in fire safety, and of course of fire marshals. Any of these things that Hesbon mentioned, I think they are basically of criminal nature. They are offenses under the Occupational Safety and Health Act, and also under the fire risk reduction rules that I talked about, that I mentioned briefly. So there are provisions, and there are penalties for this kind of activities. So any obstruction of a fire equipment carries with it some penalties if somebody is found guilty. So I think it is just a matter of time that such people will be found, and we want to encourage building users to let us know, just let us know where you find that these kind of things have been obstructed, because that's something that can be sorted out immediately. It doesn't have to take a long time to sort out. Now, on the issue of user guides, I really support that, and I think that would be very important. If you look at the fire risk reduction rules, actually, one of the things that is provided is that there shall be a map of the fire exit routes on all the floors. So every floor is required to have a map of where the exit routes should be located. And the occupiers, particularly the work owners, are required by law to ensure that every employee within the workplace is aware of such exit routes. And that's why these maps should be displayed on every floor. So the issue of harmonizing safety and security, I think I have some little experience as a health and safety manager, and one of my greatest enemies was the security manager. And at some point, I had to tell the security manager that human beings are more important than property. And that is where safety comes first. So the safety of human beings, the safety of employees comes number one above everything else. And if all of us understand it that way, then it will be easy for everyone, including designers, safety managers, security managers, to understand that the most important thing that we need to think about is safety and health in case of emergency. So, and that is why those who have understood the security sector, those who have understood this particular aspect, don't find it difficult to cooperate with safety managers. But again, at another level, and I think this is important, one of the things that engineer talked about, or fire engineering training, we need to incorporate, we need to expand the curriculum for the training of security managers and also the training of safety and health managers to include this kind of harmonization of systems so that there is no quarrel about what should come first in terms of safety and health. Now, on the issue of how to encourage manufacturers to produce more fire-rated materials, I think this is a great policy issue. It is very important, and I think it has a lot to do with taxation and so on. And maybe I think AAK can take this matter at higher levels than even at this particular level, so that it can receive the attention that it actually requires. Now, when it comes to the issue of the national fire safety policy, I don't know, but I thought this was supposed to be a long time ago. As the National Occupational Safety and Health Policy is a review, part of the policy requirements would be to consider the issue of fire safety requirements in a particular workplace. And again, I would like to inform the listeners that the building operations and works of engineering construction rules, which also provide for fire safety, are undergoing review. And of course, we expect the association to provide some important input when the time comes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you, engineer. You have a comment, and Hezbon, I can take the last round of questions.
Thank you. Well said, Madam Muruka. I think I want to agree very much on what you mentioned, especially when you're talking about the fire-rated materials. Maybe I'll start from there. You know, if there is no demand, and I know if we cannot be able to create the attention in the industry, then most definitely the economy of scales will be able to tell us that the cost will not be able to go down. So as an industry, even as designers, you know, because this starts from the design level, as an architect, as an engineer, or as the person who is designing for the fire, for that building, what is it that you're recommending? If we can be able to create that demand in the market, I believe we can have investors who are coming in, because we've had very many of them expressing interest to the authority to be able to partner with them to showcase whatever products that they have in terms of the fire protection materials. So I think the industry has not really come out strongly in terms of the demand for these materials. But I think, as Lucas mentioned, the association and the practitioners, they can be able to come out strongly so that we can get some tax incentives on this kind of products to reduce their cost into the market. I'm also trying to also try and market our local materials. We have local materials that are fire rated. How are we consuming them? The red bricks, are we talking about them? We need to maybe enhance them or value add these kind of materials so that we can be able to have them used in the construction industry. And I'm very interested, especially on the building engineering books that Lucas mentioned. As an authority, would be very, very keen to be part of this process. If you can be able to engage us so that we can contribute, we have quite a bit of stake in terms of that. The other comment I'm going to give is on the security versus safety. I think as a designer or as the person who's designing on the ground, there are decisions that lie within your purview. We have so many technologies that have come on board which can be able to combine both security and safety. We have the self-locking doors, which we can be able to install on the building. We have smart firefighting systems. So there's no, we cannot be able to compromise because we do not have these technologies in the industry. They're there. It's only that we need to go further and bring them on board into our design and advise the developers to be able to take them up. I know if you look at those old buildings, especially for the government buildings, you would find the fire exit door. It's done very nicely with the wired glass, and then there's an axe on the side. Yeah, so we can be able to look at these kind of technologies and adopt them and see if we can be able to balance between security and safety of the personnel in the house. So on the fire policy, I think that's also something that is much needed, and I think it is something that we need to look at as much as trying to bring these bodies together. As I had mentioned, we have very many stakeholders in terms of regulators and implementers. How do we put them together? Because the act, the OSHA Act prescribes the requirements that we need for the industry, but we need to see how we can match these people together. So I believe the policy is very much needed in the construction industry so that it can be able to engage all the stakeholders and bring them to one book. And also in terms of reporting, which is also something that has come out very strongly, a fire that is happening in Busia County and a fire in Mombasa, where do they meet in terms of investigation? Do we have a platform where we can be able to have these reports compared? So I think those are things that we need to look at and consider into the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer and Dr. Muruka, for the comments, the feedback. Esbon, do you have any rejoinder?
Yes, thank you, Nicholas. I think those are some very constructive feedback from our experts, and I'm happy that can hear such positive inputs. For me, it's just what engineer has just said in his last comments about comparing fires from both ends of the country. And that is one gap that we have in terms of responders and agencies that respond to emergencies. Probably we have a gap with data and risk mapping. We need to do a proper risk mapping of our country. You know, we have different emergencies that happen. So if we can come together as agencies to do proper risk mapping and how to get data and manage data in one point, because if you want to start looking for data right now, it is going to be very difficult for you. So this is one thing that I would really propose that we do. In terms of the buildings, I think I don't know who will talk to. Interior Association, IDAC, is it Interior Designers Association of Kenya? We still have the AK. But again, the old buildings, we still have building managers. That is, we have companies that manage these buildings. We need to rope them in. I don't know if we have any of them in this forum today, but one of the things we were looking at some years back as Kenya Red Cross or other firefighters forum, that is it's a consortia of different responding agencies, so led by the county government. or fire brigade. So one thing we were looking at is looking at the managers of these buildings. Like if you go into town, you go to like Wakulima Market, there's a manager, there's a person who manages that building. There's a company that manages that building. If we bring them to the table, we can start with them because they're the ones who are the consumers of those services within those buildings. So for me, it is basically forming a consortia of some sort, you know, just coming together as responders, as designers, as interior designers, as architects, as we just put our heads together so that we just say, how can we make something safe? No, if you're telling designers, let's have something called design for safety. You know, we do some designs for safety purposes. Bring all this material on board so that we can know how to just make things safe. We can do this as architects and as designers, but there's a person who's going to come and do the paint job with a very flammable material or something like that. So for me, I'm going to, those are my closing shots. And I'm sorry, Nicholas, I have to get into a meeting in two minutes. I was already in the meeting before. So I will request that I should leave so that I can concentrate on the other one. I have another 2 hours.
Yeah,
yes.
Thank you very much, Esbon. Actually, our time is also 2 minutes to the closure. So I was just actually
Yes.
going towards wrapping. But before you go, there is one question that I just addressed. Maybe we may have to think about it, engineer. But before I raise that question, before I release you, I was going in part in terms of way forward. Some of the recommendations that came, engineer had a very long list, very constructive input. You, particularly Hesbon, you mentioned about training. It also came from engineers' comments, and I thought probably as a follow-up between the stakeholders that are participating in this webinar and the others that will rope in, wouldn't it be appropriate for us to consider some training modality, basically to build the capacities, both on the side of the built environment, to have this special training around, you know, fire safety issues, response, and the concern. But also we have the occupational health and safety people who don't have the background training in the built environment. So we need to have cross kind of capacity building. And then of course, later on in terms of regulations, we have to engage with the regulatory bodies, including IEK, BORAX, and the TVET and CUE to work out probably modalities of developing a training module that is approved by DOSH, but that also addresses this really specialized need. But if you're calling it the fire engineering or whatever kind of short course, we will package that. I think that is a challenge that I wanted to post to you before you go, that as AAK, we would likely be reaching out to you, the partners here, that we can partner to bring some of the recommendations from this webinar to life. I hope you would be open to that proposal.
Personally, as sorry.
Go ahead.
So I just want to mention something very important, that at the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, we have developed a curriculum for fire safety training, and it's available. It's a 990-hour training program that takes about 1 year. And of course, before we mount it, we will be engaging the relevant stakeholders so that we can have final inputs before we mount the program.
Okay,
thank you.
Yes, Hesbon, you had a comment?
Yes, yes, I think we can have that, being that Kenya Red Cross also has a training school, and we can really rope in our training school principal and coordinators to be able to come into this. But I would also challenge you to find a way in which you can bring all the stakeholders on the table. And I think bilateral talks would also be important so that we can get to understand, because each one of us has different stakeholders that can be able to support in this one way or another. So if possible, you can reach either of us bilaterally, then we can be able to, you know, just touch base and see where we can be able to support each other. But we are open to this. I think we can have further discussions on this. I can't give a yes or a no. However, education is the key to everything. So when you have enough trainings now, we have the big boss there. So so we are safe with the engineer there. So kila kitu iko sawa. Asante sana. I'm off now, Nicholas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And finally, the last question that was asked, I just want to turn over this for the final conclusion, is where can we submit proposals on fire management, equipment, and solutions for approval? And I think as we answer that, maybe Dr. Muruka, engineer, you can also comment. Finally, this is our last comment. George Yagomba is asking, they are currently on the architecture and structural drawings undergo statutory approval. Is there consideration for mechanical and electrical building drawings also to undergo statutory approvals? Because these M&E drawings are quite heavy on firefighting aspects. So just those two questions interrelated, then we can wrap it up, and I will hand it over to the Secretariat for conclusion. Where can you submit proposals on fire management for approval?
I don't think that is our mandate at the moment.
Okay.
To look at the fire, the equipment.
Okay.
But with respect to the people who audit, of course, we approve the fire safety auditors. And we also approve the fire safety training institutions. So with respect to that, that is where our mandate ends.
Thank you. Engineer, would you comment on the M&E drawings undergoing statutory approval probably in the future?
Yeah, thank you. I think that's an aspect that we are working on currently in discussion with the county government, so that we can be able to have all the engineering drawings being part of the drawings that are being accompanied for approval, because we realized it's a very key area that needs to be taken up. So there is discussion going on to be able to have it as part of the approval process.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Muruka from DOSH, and from Engineer Stephen from NCA, and Hesbon from Kenya Red Cross. It's been very engaging. I have still a lot of really follow-up conversation to have, but because of time, and I can see many questions are also coming from the floor from our members. But please allow me not to really extend beyond so much of the time we targeted to conclude at 5. I think this would be a beginning of the conversation and the partnerships that we can have together to really address this issue. We have had fire, emergencies, fire incidences in this country many times, and when there are incidences, people really react, and there's a lot of heat. Media is covering this issue, but once the issue really comes down, we go back to our seats and comfortably just sit back and waiting for the next incident. I hope that from this webinar, we can build on this conversation and build a partnership to be able to bring some of these issues, the challenges we have raised, and the strategies that we have proposed to bear really in practice, so that we can, rather than not be firefighting when fire has broken, but we can actually be proactive to reduce the incidences of fire coming in the first place. So with all those many remarks, allow me to say thank you very much for our panelists for taking time to share with us. Thank you very much, our participants, for bearing with us beyond the time. Allow me to welcome our secretariat to give us the final vote of thanks and close the meeting. So I would like to request Lina from the secretariat. Would you kindly give us vote of thanks and any announcements from the secretariat, if any?
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for this session. And yeah, I'd like to thank, first of all, our speakers and partnering organizations like the NCA, Kenya, and Kenya Red Cross, among others. I'd like to thank you so much for speaking, Dr. Andrew Muruka, Engineer Stephen Nyakondo, and Hesbon Odhiambo for taking your time to prepare very well and speaking to us during this webinar. Thank you so much. The insight that you've given, we've learned quite a lot. Like, I mean, as a lay person, so to speak, I mean, from the building state of, from the building face of a building, I mean, fire can, sorry, I'm not letting it come out the way I want. I'm saying I've come to learn that, I mean, fire protection starts from the building face of a building. I mean, if you engage the wrong professionals, yeah, you end up putting yourself at a risk the same. So thank you so much. We've learned quite a lot. I'm sure our members have also learned quite a bit on the same. And we thank you for spending time to just go into what you do and just letting us know the salient issues. Thank you so much. We'd like to thank also our hosts, Architect Gideon Olao, who is the Environmental Design Consultants Chapter Chairperson, as well as our moderator, Architect Nixon Otieno, who is the Environmental Design Consultants Chapter Secretary. We thank our president, Architect Mugure Njendu, for this time and also for allowing this to happen and take place. Our Chief Executive Officer, Jacob Mwangi, as well as our members, and most importantly, our members for attending, being there, and also raising questions, which are also important for the delivery of this. Thank you also to the Secretariat AK for making this possible. Thank you, Christine Moura, part of AK Secretariat, for running and ensuring that all the projections were on point. Okay, and thank you, everyone. We hope that out of this, we can be able to find maybe a way of working on some of the issues that have been raised, some of the challenges, working together in the industry as the key stakeholders. Thank you so much. And we look forward to our next engagement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you very much, Lina, and thank you very much, colleagues.
Yes.
We look forward to future collaboration, and you will hear from us. The Secretariat will send any further communication on their subsequent event. For the partners, we will be reaching out to you bilaterally and officially so as to carry on. May God bless you. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye.